This is TWIS, This Week in Science, episode 1002, recorded on Thursday, February 13th, 2025, a day late. Hi, everyone. I'm Blair Bazderich, and today we'll fill your head with flies, shrimp, and turtles. But first,
thanks to our amazing Patreon sponsors for their generous support of TWIS. You can become a part of the Patreon community at patreon.com/thisweekinscience.
Disclaimer. Do not adjust your sets. It is just me. It is just Blair's Animal Corner. We'll see if we can get some more science friends in the joint soon. But if not, until then, there'll be lots of animal news this week on This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, listeners, viewers, everyone out there. Happy day of science to you all, a day late. Welcome to this week's episode of This Week in Science. We have a great show ahead, at least for what I've prepared. My name is Blair Bazderich. Today, I'm so used to saying tonight because the show is usually at night. Today, Thursday, noon, February 13th, we are going to talk about, and by we, I mean me and all of you listening and viewing out there. We're going to talk about flies. We're going to talk about mantis shrimps. We're going to talk about baby turtles. It's going to be great. And as we jump into the show here, I want to remind you all that subscribing to TWIS, the podcast, on your favorite podcast platform is the best way to help us reach other people. You can also subscribe on YouTube or Facebook, or even better, get your friends and family to subscribe as well. We want to bring science to everybody, as many people as possible, especially in times like these. Once episodes are published, you'll get notified via your subscription. Just search for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found, or you can find us at twis.org. And now it's time for another audio bump because we're going to go right into Blair's Animal Corner. Here we go.
Loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels.
With me, Blair. I have to do it all. This is crazy. So first, I want to talk to you all about baby sea turtles. Baby sea turtles are lost. And what I mean by that is that sea turtle scientists don't know where they go. We see them hatch on beaches. We see them crawl their way to the ocean, and then they disappear for 1 to 10 years. And then eventually they return to the beach, they return to the coastlines, nearly grown up, and that is when they usually lay eggs of their own. That's how they kind of complete their cycle there. But for 1 to 10 years, they're MIA. And so we have this massive data gap in the baby to toddler life stages of sea turtles, which I also love the kind of mental image of because I have a toddler at home. And to imagine a sea turtle toddler, great. No notes. Anyway, so the toddler life stage of the sea turtle is a big unknown. And so what do they do? What do researchers do? Well, researchers from University of Central Florida have attached GPS tags to the shells of young wild sea turtles. And they do that by taking out small boats and looking for young turtles drifting among the algae in Mexico. Here is a sea turtle with a little GPS tracker on him. The outside of their shells actually shed, and as they grow, turtle shells shed all the time, but they shed even more when they're growing. And so those GPS tags aren't going to last very long no matter what, but they stayed on long enough to transmit for a few weeks to a few months, and then they kind of sloughed off. And that location data was recovered. And so they were able to use that data to cross-reference kind of the long-held assumption about baby sea turtles, which is that they drift passively with ocean currents. They're still learning how to swim. They're going with the flow. They're just going wherever the ocean takes them. And eventually they build up enough knowledge, wherewithal, interest in the world to start navigating themselves around. But what they uncovered was that the turtles are actually swimming. They did that by confirming the location of these young turtles with the roots of drifting buoys that they also set in the water at the same time. They were not following the same pathway as the buoys that were drifting on their own. And more than half of those buoys washed ashore. Turtles did not, of course. And so it turns out that they're actually making their own decisions about where they want to go and what to avoid. It also showed that there was more variability in locations than scientists expected. And so the turtles actually moved between different types of habitats in a way that they didn't anticipate. So they moved between the continental shelf and open ocean. They moved all over the place, way more than was previously thought. And for a really long time, it wasn't possible to kind of track these turtles, and it was a long-held dream of researchers, like someday we'll find out what those turtles are up to. But finally, the technology has arrived that has allowed marine biologists to actually see what these guys are up to when they are young. So now we know that can help with sea turtle conservation, of course. And so it can also help kind of plan for how to care for turtles. We know that turtles are endangered, and they have a lot of pressure on them between climate change, plastic pollution, trafficking. All those things together are impacting sea turtle populations. We can protect them when they're eggs. We can protect them when they're adults. Now, if we know what they're up to when they are in this baby and toddler phase, we can protect them as well. So that is what I learned about turtles. Does anyone in the chat room have anything they want to kind of hear more about? Have any questions? Want to contribute anything? Just want to make sure we're having a nice conversation here since it's just me. Yeah, so those are the sea turtles. If you ever wondered what they've been up to in their toddler years. All right, so moving on from adorable baby sea turtles, let's talk about flies. Everyone loves flies, right? So we're talking about this guy right here. Hey, look at this buddy. So these are dance flies is what they're called. And they're called that because they have this really specific reproductive strategy. The adult flies lay eggs during the summer in dirt. They hatch into predatory larvae in the soil. The larvae hunt and eat other organisms. They become pupae before the winter. They kind of hibernate out the winter as pupae. And then in the spring, they complete their development and become flying insects, the flies. The flies emerge, and then they fly for only a few weeks. And during that time, the males and females gather, they swarm, and they dance. And they dance around to court each other. The males bring nuptial gifts. That's how the females eat. So the males find their own food. Females only pretty much eat via the gifts. And then they swarm and they mate. And then the females, they eat the male gift while the male inseminates her. The mating is repeated several times with different partners. And then once the female has mated enough, she lays eggs into the soil, and it all starts over again in this beautiful cycle. And so what this study is looking at is kind of their very own battle of the sexes from universities of Gothenburg and Stockholm. And that's because the females want those nuptial gifts. They want food. They're hungry. And the males want to inseminate females that have lots of eggs. And so those two things are at odds because the females want to get the most delicious goodies, but the males only want to bring goodies to the females that deserve it, that have the most eggs. And so the females have found ways to trick the males into looking bigger and more fecund, like they have more eggs. It turns out males, in their own turn, have sharpened their eyesight to be able to tell when females are bluffing. In different species of dance flies, they have different methods for doing that. They could have really hairy legs. They could swallow air to make them look bigger and more full of eggs. And the males, these dance fly males they have found, have developed sharper vision on the very top of their eyes. They have enlarged eye facets specifically on the very top. And that's because the males approach from below. So these extra good eye facets on the top of their eye stalks, that allows them to kind of inspect the females carefully so that they can call the females bluffs. They can figure out whether the female is truly full of eggs or if they just want some delicious treats. And then they can save their treats for the females that are most worthy. So this is a really interesting case of an evolutionary arms race. We talk about that all the time with predators and prey. But in this case, it is with males and females who are kind of fighting to get the most out of each other in the reproductive relationship. And so this is a really funny case of kind of evolutionary one-upmanship between males and females within a species. Also, in a couple of these dancefly species, the females also appear to maybe have enlarged facets on the underside of their eye. They're not sure why. It might be to be able to see an approaching male more quickly, get to an advantageous position, get in the exact right angle so they look nice and big, see what they might be bringing them. Who knows? But this eyesight coupled with kind of the bluffing posturing of the females is a really interesting dynamic for this reproductive pair. So yeah, those are the dance flies. And then my last story for today, this is going to be the shortest episode of This Week in Science ever, is all about mantis shrimps. And mantis shrimps, we've talked about on this show many times. And that is because they have a really unique way of protecting themselves and hunting. And that is they are stabby or punchy. Is how we used to talk about it on the show all the time. And so here we are. The mantis shrimp, they can see a myriad more colors than we can. They are extremely beautiful. They are crazy looking. But they also have these big old hammers or big old spears. And so for this one, from this study from Northwestern University, we are looking at the hammer type of this particular Pokemon. The mantis shrimp, the smashy version can smash with the force of a .22 caliber bullet. But what's really interesting about that, and something that I hadn't really thought about very much, is that they don't crumple. You would think if they were hitting something with blunt force, with that much force, that they themselves would take some of that force and they would get injured by it. And it's so funny that I never really considered that. So Northwestern University looked at these guys, their fists or their dactyl clubs, and looked at the specific structure that they had. It turns out that they are covered in layered patterns which filter out sound. And remember, this smash is similar to like a sonic boom. So they're blocking specific vibrations, specific wavelengths, and that shields them against self-generated shock waves. Most prior work looking at these guys' clubs has been focused on the toughness and crack resistance. And so they treat the structure as a toughened impact shield. They've used that to kind of see if they can build similar materials for humans to use that could be, essentially riot shields and things like that. And so that has been the majority of the research done on the smashy version of the mantis shrimp. But they found in this new research that it used phononic mechanisms, structures that selectively filter out stress waves, which enables them to preserve their striking ability over multiple impacts and prevent soft tissue damage. So the soft tissue damage, that makes sense. They're not being injured. But the preserving the striking ability is interesting, because if it was just a shield, that shield would weaken over many smashes. But the fact that it doesn't weaken and they maintain their striking ability means there is something else at play. So how did they figure this out? First, they applied transient grating spectroscopy, which is a laser-based method that analyzes stress waves and how they propagate through materials. Then they employed picosecond laser ultrasonics, it's very fast, which provide further insights into the armor's microstructure. And they found two distinct regions in the club. Each was engineered for a specific function within the mantis shrimp's club. The impact region, which is responsible for delivering the blow, had mineralized fibers arranged in a herringbone pattern, which gave it resistance to failure. So that keeps it reinforced for many repeated smashes. Beneath that, the periodic region features twisted, corkscrew-like fiber bundles. And those bundles form something called a Bouligand structure, which is a layered arrangement in which each layer is progressively rotated relative to its neighbors. And so the herringbone reinforces the club against fractures. The corkscrew governs how stress waves travel through the structure. That design acts as a phononic shield, which filters high-frequency stress waves to prevent damaging vibrations from propagating back into the shrimp's arm and body. Basically, it's preventing wear and tear, and it's filtering out specific waves to make this guy extra good at the smashy part of his job. This research, this is like the big disclaimer on this research though, it analyzed 2D simulations of wave behavior, but they would really like 3D simulations next in order to fully understand the club's complex structure. Also, beyond that, beyond the 3D simulations, they want to actually do real-life aquatic experiments with instrumentation so that they can investigate how phononic properties function in water. So they need to do it out of water, then they need to do it in water. And so all of this, in theory, could result in synthetic sound filtering materials for protective gear. And it could also inspire new approaches in reducing blast-related injuries in military and sports. So you might see some of this popping up in the military and, of course, in football, obviously, right? So there's another picture of our guy, the mantis shrimp. There you go. And that is what we learned about mantis shrimps this week, which I love when the mantis shrimp makes an appearance in the animal corner. And that is all of the science that I have this week. I cannot believe it. But we are done at the 20-minute mark with This Week in Science's Blair's Animal Corner this week. If you're just tuning in, I'm sorry, you've missed the majority of the show. This is This Week in Science. We are supported by listeners like you. You can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/thisweekinscience. Thank you to Fada for his help with social media and show notes. I see you here. Thank you, Gord, for manning the chat room. I don't know. Oh, did I see Gord today? I haven't noticed. Oh, there he is. Hi, Gord. Thank you for being here. Thank you for Identity 4 for recording the show. I know that you're here. Thank you, Rachel, for your assistance in editing. This is going to be an interesting one for you. And of course, I would like to again thank our Patreon sponsors. I do not have the list of Patreon sponsors, so insert reading of Patreon sponsors here.
Lauren Gifford, Dana Lewis, Eden Mundell, Alan Viola, Aaron Anathema, Arthur Kepler, Craig Potts, Mary Gertz, Teresa Smith, Richard Badge, Bob Coles, Kent Northcote, George Corris, Pierre Velazarb, John Ratnaswamy, Chris Wozniak, Vigard Shefstad, Donovan Styles, a.k.a. Don Stylo, Ali Coffin, Shubru, Sarah Forfart, Don Mundus, PIG, Stephen Alberon, Daryl Myshak, Andrew Swanson, Fredis 104, Sky Luke, Paul Ronovich, Kevin Reardon, Noodles, Jack Brian Carrington, David E. Youngblood, Sean Clarence Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenflow, Steve Leisman, a.k.a. Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Richard, Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley, Remy Day, G. Burton, Lattimore, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, Artyom, Greg Riggs, John Atwood, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul Phillips, Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Knapp, Lon Makes, E.O., Adam Mishkan, Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Bob Caldry, Marjorie, Paul D. Disney, Patrick Pecoraro, and Tony Steele.
Know that we care about you and we love you. Thank you for helping make this show happen. On next week's show, at some time in the universe, we will be speaking, hopefully with Kiki, maybe with Justin, about science. To my knowledge, it'll be Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time. That's when our show usually broadcasts live from Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. If you're not sure, though, check our social media. You can also listen to us as a podcast. Just search for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, get your friends to subscribe as well. For more information on anything you've heard here today, if you want to look at more pictures of mantis shrimp, I get it. Links to stories will be available on our website, www.twis.org. You can also sign up for a newsletter there. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, or a suggestion for an interview, please let us know on one of our social media accounts or send us an email. Maybe don't tell us that you want more people on the show, though, because we really did try. This is the best I can do today. But when you do send an email, be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, in the subject line, or your email will be smashed into oblivion by a mantis shrimp. We look forward to discussing science with you again next week. And if you learned anything from the show, remember, it's all in your head.
This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.